I was only supposed to stay one night. Alder Hollow, nestled in the northern peaks of Vermont, is a place most people forget. It's not on many maps, and GPS gives up a few miles before the last dirt road curves into town. I came here to photograph abandoned places for a coffee table book. The innkeeper, Mrs. Lorne, greeted me like I was the first outsider she'd seen in years. She probably wasn't exaggerating. The inn was old oak beams, faded wallpaper, the smell of dried herbs and wood smoke. My room had a brass bed frame and a window that looked out over the town square. I arrived in late October, leaves brittle and orange underfoot, the sky dry and colorless.
"You'll like it here,"
Mrs. Lorne said as she handed me the key.
"but don't expect snow."
I paused. What do you mean? She smiled, polite but tight.
"We haven't had a real winter in decades, not since the freeze."
I assumed it was a local idiom. I didn't ask. I wish I had. I wandered through town the next morning with my camera slung over my shoulder. The houses were small and well kept, but oddly lifeless. No children, no pets. The people who passed me nodded with grim civility, but didn't stop to chat. I noticed that every building had its windows sealed with strange symbols etched in chalk. A few even had rusted iron charms hanging over the doorways. That night, I stayed up late, editing photos. Around 1 a.m., something strange happened. The wind changed. It started as a low moan, like air moving through a bottle. Then came the snow. I stared out my window in disbelief. Thick, white flakes swirled under the yellow street lamp in the square. It looked beautiful and untouched. It was perfect. But what made my stomach drop was Mrs. Lorne. She stood in the middle of the square in her nightgown, arms raised to the sky, as if pleading with something I couldn't see. Her mouth moved rapidly, but I couldn't hear her words through the glass. Behind her, the townsfolk emerged silently from their homes, barefoot in the cold, eyes wide, watching the snow fall with something that looked a lot like terror. The next morning, I found the town utterly changed. The snow was thick, ankle deep, untouched by plow or shovel. I asked Mrs. Lorne what was going on.
"The ice is thinning."
I wandered to the square and found that someone, or something, had scratched deep grooves into the snow around the old fountain. Not footsteps, claw marks, 5 digits spread wide. That evening, the town's power went out. The temperature inside the inn plummeted. I bundled in every layer I had and lit a candle. Somewhere outside, something howled. It was not a wolf. There was a scratching at my window, faint, like fingernails on old glass. My room was on the second floor. At sunrise, I ventured out. The town square was empty, and the fountain was broken open, not just cracked, hollowed. The stone shattered from the inside, chunks of it strewn across the snow. Beneath it yawned a black pit, deep and wide, and I swear I felt air rising from it. Warm, rancid air, like something breathing. I found a diary in the inn's library, tucked behind a row of gardening manuals. Its pages were warped with age. The author, someone named Tobias Merrow, had lived here in 1910.
"We buried it beneath the square. We called on the old ice, sealed it in frost, trapped its hunger below the town. Winter came then, years of bitter snow, a price we paid gladly. Better that than what lay beneath."
The final entry, dated March 1920, read,
"The thaw has begun. May the town never know winter again."
I understood then. The snow had stopped coming not by nature's will, but by some pact, something old and forgotten. They banished winter to keep something worse asleep. But now the snow had returned, and it had also returned. That night the screaming began. Not from outside, but from within the buildings. Doors burst open. A man staggered into the street with no eyes, just smooth skin stretched over his sockets. From another house, a woman ran shrieking, her hands waving frantically as she disappeared into the night. I fled to the inn cellar. From the cracks in the floorboards, I heard something wet moving across the lobby above me. Mrs. Lorne called out. A high, helpless sound. And then, silence. I've been in this cellar for what I think is 2 days. My phone has no signal and my watch has stopped. The candle is burning lower. Outside, the snow has stopped falling, but the cold hasn't left. I can hear it now, scratching above me. It moves slow, like it's savoring the place, like it remembers. This town forgot winter, but winter didn't forget the town. And now, it knows I'm here too. When I was a kid, I was terrified of hotel rooms. It wasn't the beds or the smell of industrial cleaner, it was the corners, the places my parents never looked at, but I did. I'd scan the space between the dresser and the wall, the sliver of shadow under the desk, the dim gap under the closet door. I was convinced that if I looked away long enough, something would appear there. My parents thought it was funny. They'd laugh, ruffle my hair, and tell me it was my imagination. But the fear didn't fade. It rooted deep, like a splinter I couldn't pull out. By my mid-20s, I thought I'd outgrown it. I traveled constantly for work, checking in and out of hotels so often they began to blur together. Beige walls, beige carpets, beige everything. The sameness was oddly comforting. I told myself I was past it. That was before the Comfort Haven in Denton, North Carolina. It was nothing special. A squat, 2-story building across from a dim car dealership, their lot lit by buzzing orange lamps. I carried my suitcase up the narrow outdoor stairwell and into my room. The air smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. I unpacked just enough to get by, grabbed some takeout, and settled in with a horror movie. Halfway through, I noticed a sound. At first I thought it was part of the film, a faint crackling, like static, or maybe fabric being turned slowly in someone's hands. But when the scene went silent, the sound kept going. Not constant, just once every minute or so. I paused the movie. It was coming from the closet. The door was shut, but there was a thin line of shadow beneath it. I stared at it for a while, waiting for something, movement, a change in the sound, but it stayed the same. A minute later, crackle. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the AC shifting the hangers. I turned the movie back on, turned the volume up. 2 sleeping pills later, I fell asleep. When I woke, my heart was pounding like I'd been running. The room was silent, except for the faintest whisper of fabric. I switched on the lamp. A man in black was bent over my open suitcase, hood shadowing his face. He didn't look at me, didn't speak, just bolted for the door so fast the chain lock snapped. My wallet and watch were gone. The police treated it like any other break-in. I didn't tell them how quiet he'd been, how deliberate, how I had the distinct, sickening feeling that he'd been in the room for a long time before I woke. I thought it was over. 2 years later, it happened again. I'd had a fight with my father. Ugly, loud, one of those arguments that leaves you too wired to sleep. I didn't want to go home, so I checked into the Silver Pines Inn, half a mile away. The place felt empty. The lobby was deserted, the hallways hushed. Even the pool outside was still, the water reflecting the flat white light from a single bulb. I swam for a while, trying to shake the tension, but I kept glancing at the upper balcony. Once, I thought I saw someone leaning on the rail, watching me. By the time I blinked, they were gone. My room smelled stale, with an undercurrent of something metallic. I was scrolling through my phone when I heard it. Crackle. From the closet. Every hair on my arms lifted. I stared at the door, counting seconds between the sounds. A minute later, another faint shift of fabric. I stayed awake for hours, eyes fixed on the closet. Eventually, exhaustion won. I must have dozed off, because when I opened my eyes, the door was ajar. The chair I'd wedged under the knob was tipped on its side. On the nightstand, where there had been nothing before, sat a single black glove. I checked out before sunrise. The man at the front desk didn't even look up from his crossword. Now, no matter how bright the lobby or how clean the sheets, I still check the corners. I still watch the closet. And sometimes, late at night, when the hum of the air conditioner dips and the silence stretches too far, I hear it again. That slow, patient crackle of fabric. I'm starting to think I was never imagining anything. And I'm starting to think he's still following me. I never believed in cursed objects or haunted media. I'm not the type. I teach digital media theory at a small college in Maine. My life is built on logic, pixels, signals, metadata. And yet here I am, writing this at the edge of a twin bed in a roadside hotel, afraid to even glance at the television in the corner. Let me explain. I came to Westhold to settle my late uncle's estate. My parents died when I was young, and Uncle Ray took me in for a while. After I left for college, we didn't talk much. The man was kind but off, always filming, even when no one wanted him to. He didn't have kids, never married, just lived alone in a mossy house at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by VHS tapes and analog junk. The house was just as I remembered, musty, dim, cluttered. I spent the day sorting through boxes in the attic. That's where I found the camcorder, an old JVC model from the 90s, still in its padded case with a stack of unlabeled tapes beside it. I should have left them, but I brought it all back to the hotel. I planned to digitize the footage for archival purposes, maybe use it for a project. That was 4 nights ago. The first tape started innocently enough. Home movies, Christmas mornings, walks in the woods. But something was off. Uncle Ray was always behind the camera, but the footage showed things he couldn't have filmed. Like me, asleep in my dorm room, or my mother and father, alive, arguing in the kitchen, years after their funeral. And then, on the third tape, I watched myself entering this very hotel room. Same flannel shirt, same duffel bag. The timestamp read 2 nights before I actually arrived. I stared at the screen for nearly an hour, watching myself unpack, brush my teeth, and sit on the edge of the bed to write. The exact thing I'm doing now. But in the tape, I never stopped writing. Not even when the static began creeping in. Not even when the door behind me opened on its own. I chalked it up to old tape degradation, mislabeling, dreams maybe, but I couldn't stop watching. Last night, the 5th tape started with heavy static, then cut to a living room I didn't recognize. A woman and a child were sitting on the couch, frozen in place, eyes wide open, not blinking, not moving. A man entered the frame. My uncle! His voice was distorted, slowed, and reversed. He held the camcorder in front of his face like a mask. He raised his free hand and pointed at the boy. The screen flickered violently, and when it stabilized, the boy was gone. Just gone. The woman didn't move. The timestamp? Tomorrow. I tried turning the camcorder off. It wouldn't shut down. I pulled the battery. Still it hummed, lens wide open, tape whirring softly. When I unplugged the television, the image transferred to the mirror. No, I'm not joking. I wish I was. The mirror showed the next tape. A child crying in a bathtub, while shadows flickered across the tiled walls. The same boy from the couch. His eyes were bleeding. And again, Uncle Ray behind the camera. Except this time he wasn't pointing. He was waving. This morning, I returned to the house to find answers. Maybe I thought if I brought the camcorder back, it would all stop. Inside, the house smelled worse than before. The air was thick, wet, as if the walls were breathing. The tapes had multiplied. There were dozens more now, stacked like teeth along the rafters. And they were labeled, Michael, tomorrow. Michael, next Monday. Michael, next Tuesday. Each tape had a scene scrawled on the label in shaky handwriting. You open the bathroom door. You answer the phone that doesn't ring. You see him in the mirror. You stop writing. I took only one tape, the one marked for today. Back at the hotel, I played it. The screen was black for a long time. Then, static. Then, me. Sitting on this very bed, I was crying. No sound, just tears streaming as I stared at something off camera. Then, I stood up, walked to the bathroom, turned the light on. I watched myself stare into the mirror. And from behind me, Uncle Ray stepped into view. But it wasn't him anymore. His eyes were empty. The skin on his face was pale and sunken, his smile too wide. He raised the camcorder to his face, and where the lens should be, there was a mouth. A wet, gasping mouth. I turned off the television, but the image stayed on the screen. Now I'm writing this. Just like in the footage. I haven't gone into the bathroom yet. The door is closed. The light inside just flicked on by itself. There's static leaking from the crack beneath it. Not light, static. I can hear the tape playing from my bag, even though it's not plugged in. My reflection in the television just smiled at me. I didn't smile. I swear, I didn't. I don't think the camcorder is just showing what's coming. I think it's deciding it. I checked into the Mirador Hotel just after sunset. The kind of place that looks glamorous in its brochures, but feels sterile once you're inside. I was there for a conference, 3 nights, alone, in a city I didn't know. It was one of those high-rises that tried to be both historic and modern, with Art Deco lighting and too much chrome. My room was on the 14th floor, even though the elevator skipped from 12 to 15. I noticed that, stupidly, and it stuck with me. The room itself was fine. Beige wallpaper, heavy blackout curtains, a king-size bed that sagged slightly in the middle. There was a faint chemical smell, like someone had tried too hard to cover up something more unpleasant. I didn't feel unsafe exactly, but something about the room made me feel watched. I chalked it up to travel fatigue. That first night, I was too tired to go out, so I ordered room service. The front desk transferred me to the kitchen, and a man answered. His voice was low and oddly slow, as if each word was being weighed before it left his mouth. I ordered a club sandwich and a beer. He repeated the order back, then said,
"I'll bring it myself."
There was a knock 15 minutes later, 2 soft taps. I opened the door, expecting a bellhop or a server in a uniform. Instead, there stood a man in a black waiter's jacket, but everything about him was off. His skin was pale, almost gray. His eyes stared just past me, never quite meeting mine. His smile was too thin. He didn't bring a cart, just a silver tray balanced perfectly in one hand, like something from a movie. I thanked him, but he didn't leave. Just stood there, holding the tray out until I took it. The moment I did, he turned and walked back down the hallway without a word. The sandwich was cold. The beer was warm. I didn't eat much. That night, I dreamt of the waiter standing in the corner of my room, unmoving, with those huge eyes fixed on me while I lay paralyzed in bed. I woke up gasping, my chest tight, the room stifling despite the air conditioner humming away. The next morning, I noticed something strange. The chair in the corner was facing the bed. I was sure I hadn't left it that way. I mentioned it to the front desk as a joke, but the woman didn't laugh. She glanced at her computer screen, then back at me, and asked if I remembered his name. I didn't. She asked what he looked like, so I told her. Pale, dark hair, slicked back, sunken cheeks. She gave me this tight smile and said they rotate staff all the time. It could have been anyone. That day passed in a blur of meetings and small talk. When I got back, there was a note under my door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper. Inside, in neat handwriting, it read, "Don't move the chair. He watches better that way." Thinking it was a prank, I screwed it up and threw it away. I left the light on and the curtains open, but every time I drifted off, I'd startle awake, certain I'd heard someone breathing. At one point, the air conditioner sputtered and died. I called down to the front desk, and they promised maintenance would fix it in the morning. The next day, after my meetings, I returned to find the air still thick and warm. The chair, still pointed directly at the bed, had been moved closer, just a foot, maybe two, close enough that it couldn't be dismissed as an accident. I called room service out of some perverse desire to confront it. The same voice answered, same slow, heavy words.
"I'll bring it myself."
This time I waited by the door. When the knock came, I yanked it open immediately. Same man, same expression. He handed me the tray without speaking. "I know it's you moving the chair," I said, louder than I meant to. His mouth twitched. Not a smile, just movement.
"I don't go inside. He doesn't like that."
"Who?" The waiter blinked, then leaned in.
"You'll meet him soon."
I slammed the door. I should have checked out or called management to complain, but something about the room, the chair, the presence, I felt trapped. Like leaving wouldn't matter, like whatever it was would follow. That evening, I turned the chair to face the window. Around 3 a.m., I was awoken by someone in the hall. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Nothing. But then, faint scraping from inside the room. I turned slowly. The chair was facing the bed again, only now it was occupied. The waiter sat there, motionless. But it wasn't him, not really. His body, maybe, but the eyes were wrong. Black wet holes. His limbs too long, joints bent like broken puppets. Something was wearing him. It stood, slowly and awkwardly, and tilted its head. Its mouth opened, wider than it should have, revealing nothing inside, just darkness. Then it spoke, not aloud, but in my head, a wet, echoing voice that sounded like it came from behind my eyes.
"He likes how you dream."
I blacked out. I woke up the next morning in bed, drenched in sweat. The chair was empty, the tray was gone. No sign anyone had been there. I checked out without showering, without brushing my teeth, drove to the airport in silence. The Mirador Hotel emailed me yesterday, said I left something behind in the room. They attached a photo. It was the chair, facing the bed, and in the background, through the mirror, just barely, the pale man in black, watching.